One Piece is one of my favourite anime, and one of the main reasons is the amazing fights it showcases. So today at ViniiTube, we're looking at the top 20 visually stunning fights in One Piece. Put your straw hat on, because we're about to set sail. Let's start with Zoro vs. Killer. Zoro's fight against Killer in Wano Kuni was pretty unexpected. I mean, seeing Killer without his mask was weird in its own right.
Who are you?
But seeing the two members of the worst generation going toe-to-toe in a low-stake fight was weirder. In any case, even though Zoro was fighting with a handicap and still keeping up with Killer, who had both his blades, was a class act. However, in the end, Zoro does end up getting stabbed due to interference from Onimaru. But just like his usual self, Zoro was able to make the best of the situation as he got a third weapon along with a wound, which he was able to use to his advantage. Giving us a peek into how the final fight was going to go against King, Zoro dashed forward, leaving behind a blazing aura to defeat Killer and end his sociopathic rampage in Wano. Few fights stand above Luffy's battle with Lucci, but we're here to discuss the visual nature of those fights, so we'll have to move on to post-time skip now, as it had, hands down, one of the best animated fights in anime ever. And the first one we're going to discuss is Robin's devilish beatdown of Black Maria. As Black Maria started to gain pace with the fight, it was time for Robin to display the training she'd done with the Revolutionary Army, and boy did that training pay off. Although the color red is mostly associated with rage, it suited a calm Robin's transformation into abominating devil pretty well. Once the hands Robin started to encapsulate Black Maria, we knew something big was coming, with my bet being on a punch down. What we got though was even better, as Robin, staying true to her clutching techniques, finished her opponent in her regular but rather spectacular backbreaking techniques.
ちょっと疲れちゃった。
おっちょっと。
Moving up the list, we have another banger of a fight that lets us take a look into the honourable, and this time around haki-cladded fists of the first son of the sea, Jinbei, against Who's Who. This was a very unlikely matchup, but there was no one in the castle strong enough to take down a member of the Toby Roppo who was almost on par with the performers. However, unlike the other fighters, this wasn't a prolonged battle, but more like an advanced lesson on how to tame wild cats, taught by none other than our beloved helmsman. As Who's Who attacks Jinbei, the haki clash and shockwaves filled up the castle in an insane burst of power, but at the end, even after being out of his element, Jinbei was able to slay the beast in his own domain by powering through Who's Who's armament haki and turning his fingers into literal jello, finishing the fight in a very likely and, may I say, honourable fashion. Talking about honourable, the next beatdown was anything but one. Cat Viper and Dogstorm's fight against Perospero and Jack were one of the most anticipated battles since Jack's attack on Zoe, and boy did Oda deliver. The simultaneous attacks and their Sulong forms shining above the dark fate their kind had suffered fueled a ferociousness that came out with a flawless animation. Both Perospero and Jack knew that something big was coming their way, but they couldn't have anticipated in 1,000 years that it would be their ends. Both the Minks took inspiration from the attacks of their master Oden, and while copying his one-sword style multiplied with their Sulong forms, they were able to exact revenge for both Zhou and Pedro, who, if you remember, was killed while fighting Perospero in the whole Cake Island arc. But what stood out most during their battle was the Odin-like aura surrounding both the Mink leaders. That was just an amazing treat to witness in action. And for the most hardcore fans, I wouldn't have blamed them for shedding a few tears during that scene because it was so good. But speaking of hardcore and not including one of the best fights during the Wano arc, or rather a flashback, would be a disservice to the whole One Piece community. And I'm of course talking about Roger's crew versus the Whitebeard crew. With Roger starting the fight with a divine departure, thwarting away Kaido like an insect, we knew we were in for something big. And once Whitebeard jumped over the trees to confront Roger, we laid eyes on one of the strongest shockwaves the world of One Piece could have ever come across. The clash of two supreme beings shook both the land below the island and the sky above, creating a pool of haki-infested hurricane. The fight that lasted 3 days and 3 nights, although had a great beginning, just turned into a party as it ended, and as fans, we were all in for some drinks at the end of it. And talking about Oden's aura, our next entry is the hero of Wano himself, whose fight with the King of Beasts was nothing less than legendary. Once Kaido lit the ground with his blast breath and Oden emerged unscathed, we knew that the fight would carry some serious consequences, but as we already knew the future, it was just a matter of finding out how Oden was defeated. Well, the battle was tumultuous to say the least, as the Scabbards and Oden were literally up against the whole of Kaido's crew, which made the battle a bit lopsided. But Kaido, deciding to stay in his dragon form and become an easy target for Oden, made the scale even, up to the point that Oden was able to take a full-fledged slam and blast breath, only to emerge out of the other end of the fire and give Kaido his signature battle scar. But you know, as Kaido predicted, he could only be defeated by Joy Boy. It just wasn't Oden's time, as he was defeated by deception, resulting in Kaido's faulty victory over the rightful ruler of Wano. Next up is one of the most insane fights by an admirable villain, which you might have guessed by now is Katakuri. Katakuri's assault on Luffy in the mirror would have brought the best out of both the Conqueror's Haki's users, but it gave us something even better, which is Katakuri's donut wheel case.
Oh, donuts.
Look, I'm just kidding. The fight between Luffy and Katakuri gave us the incredible transformation of Snake Man Luffy that turned out to be the perfect counter for Katakuri's future sight, as Luffy picked up on it during the battle. I mean, seeing an attack in the future is useless if you're not fast enough to avoid it. The visuals of the fight gave us goosebumps, along with the answer of what would have happened if Luffy fought a stronger and better version of himself and how he could overcome that. Well, the answer turns out to be brute strength, speed, and a whole lot of badassery. If you're enjoying this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel to watch some awesome anime content. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell while you're at it to be updated every time I drop a video. Thank you. Speaking of strength and speed, the next fight we have on our list has a character that's maxed out both of those stats. Yep, it's Shanks, who faced the Captain Kid on screen in a fight that can only be described in 2 words: thoroughly spanked. Kid, who had his hopes up in the sky after co-defeating Big Mom along with Law, had his eyes set on annihilating the pirates under Shanks with one of his energy attacks, but the one-handed captain saw it coming seconds before and decided to rain down a divine departure right in front of Kid's face that sealed his fate as a bum forever. What followed was a total destruction of the Victoria Punk by Dory and Broggy, and the only thing worthwhile during the whole fight was the animation and the look on the faces of every Captain Kid glazer. Now, One Piece is filled with ideologies which sometimes get family members fighting within themselves, and the battle between Kaido and Yamato is the perfect and most prominent example of the clash of different ideologies. After Luffy was thrown down the rooftop, Yamato had no other way than to challenge Kaido himself and stall until Luffy could get back there. And boy, even though the fight was just a race against time, it really had the main character's spirit imbued in it. The clash of Kaido and Yamato's batons and their weirdly similar yet different fighting styles and devil fruits had us all in a frenzy. Once the fight began, both the competitors' hybrid forms were continuously dishing out extreme danger, with Yamato taking the majority of it. However, once she realized that she couldn't actually defeat her father, she started to play defensively. While doing so, she became one of the few people in history who were able to draw out Kaido's blood. However, the fight would end soon as Luffy would arrive to face Kaido once again. But there were other people who fought Kaido before this fight, and in fact, the visuals from the previous fight of Kaido and the Akazaya 9 were stunning. Now, as Jack was getting beat up by Cat Viper and Dogstorm in their Sulong form, Kaido had to intervene, and in doing so, he came face to face with the Akazaya 9, or the 9 Scabbards, after almost 20 years. Kinemon's Foxfire style was the perfect counter to Kaido's Blast Breath, which gave the rest of the Scabbards enough time to mobilize and garner their strength. The barrages of rough blows from different angles on Kaido's body made countering them difficult for the King of Beasts. However, still his brood strength was enough to swat them away like flies. The Mink's Sulong forms, Kinemon's assault mimicking Oden's one-sword style, Raizo's reversal of the Blast Breath using his scroll were the best moments of the disciples of Oden. Next up on our list is Sanji versus Queen. Setting up the battle in a huge corridor was actually a disadvantage for Sanji, as his use of the airwalk was limited inside the castle. And once Queen revealed that he could copy all of Sanji's brother's moves, the left-hand man of the future King of Pirates was thoroughly disgusted. Stack that with Queen assaulting an unarmed woman, this was already a recipe for disaster, which manifested in the form of one of the coolest attacks in all of One Piece, the Ifrit Jambe. Sanji, accepting his body enhancements and combining them with the armament Haki, was able to bring forth the coolest and hottest flames that burnt blue. Once the flames were summoned, the canvas of the fight turned into flowing colours, being ridden by the flames, giving us one of the best beatdowns so far in the series. In the end, Sanji was able to defeat Queen, however he lost the theoretical battle in the sense that Queen was always right about Sanji being a product of Germa, even partially.
だ
By now, you might be wondering why we're beating around the bush and not coming up with the showstoppers. Alright. Next up on our list is the Battle Royale at the rooftop. Right when Big Mom and Kaido were confronted by Luffy, Zoro, Killer, Kid and Law, we knew that this battle was going to be very destructive, and rightfully so. I mean, the two attacks that could now hurt Kaido came instantly after Luffy revealed his Ryu, along with Zoro releasing Enma's untapped Haki that was much like the one Kaido was hit with by Oden years ago. For the first time in the series, there were characters on equal footing with Yonkos, instigating a new dawn essentially. And although the whole battle would be a bit difficult to sum up in this short segment, some of the most marvelous moments were that of Luffy passing by as the two Yonkos stood with bewilderment. The very next attack that hit Kaido was the Red Hawk, which was one of the sweetest punches since Luffy hit St. Charlos. Zoro's Ashura's blade that made him another one of the people that drew out Kaido's blood in battle, and finally the fight between Law, Kid and Luffy on Who's the Wimp were one of the best moments of the fight. Now, as we were making this list, we also remembered that although the newest arc in One Piece hasn't fully picked up in the anime yet, we have another fight apart from Kid's beatdown, which was actually a pretty thrilling watch. Blackbeard, Dokkyu, Van Orga and Jesus Burgie's attack on the Heart Pirates was phenomenal. The pacing, the animation and the fight choreography were simply amazing. Law in this fight really proved that he'd grown beyond the level of a Yonko commander, but not really there at the Yonko level. And although Law's attacks were amazing as usual, we kind of got accustomed to them in Wano, so things looked a little bit stale. But what didn't look stale was the Sulong transformation of Beppo that turned out to be the game changer of the fight. As Law was about to get annihilated, Beppo's interference and the Blackbeard's crew inefficiency to work together came in handy, and both of them escaped their imminent deaths. And as we talk about Law's defeat, we can't let his fans go without actually putting his best foot forward. So next up on the list is the second Yonko battle that took place in Wano between Big Mom, Law and Kid. This fight was heavily influenced by each individual's devil fruits. No conquerors, no armament, just plain old devil fruit magic. Kid's constant barrage of humongous guns and Law's teleporting abilities made the two the peskiest opponents Big Mom ever faced. But I could vividly remember when the episode aired that Law's background was changing instead of him when teleporting, and it was one of the best third-person fight sequences I'd watched in a while. And although Kid acted as the muscle of the fight and took on most of the damage dished out by Big Mom, Law's move to finish the fight with Corazone's ability of muting Big Mom had me grinning like an idiot with nostalgia. And speaking of idiots, how can I forget Garp? I mean, come on, don't tell me you haven't tried a galaxy impact on your sibling yet. The way Garp punched his entire ship in the air by creating a punch vacuum in the ocean, then raining down a literal galaxy-inspired fist down on the Blackbeard crew, annihilating a large chunk of the island, was exhilarating. And his eventual encounter with Kuzan, which had both of them rethinking their whole lives, was also a big moment in the fight. I believe that the most charismatic parts of the fight are behind us at this moment. When Kuzan says, "You trained a troublesome enemy," and Garp responds saying, "You are expelled," it was a bit of an emotional moment, don't you feel? The combatant of the next fight has been holding a grudge against the Straw Hats and especially Luffy for a pretty long time. Rob Lucci and Luffy's second battle was, let's say, embarrassing to say the least for the CP0 leader. Luffy took Lucci's strongest hits and ate them like toast during breakfast, and every clear hit he dealt to Lucci put immense pressure on the agent. With the first hit, it was clear that even if Lucci was somehow on the same power level as Luffy, he would still get swept off the floor by the mere goofiness and unpredictability that came along with Gear 5. Finally, we're at the top fights. And how could these not include the titular awakening of the Sun God? Luffy's last fight against Kaido was everything everyone has ever seen before and not seen at the same time, because I personally still treat that battle as a fever dream. Luffy running on the rubberized clouds while hurling rubber lightning on the strongest creature, all while coming up with the goofiest attacks possible, was not on my 2023 bingo list. And although it was completely not what the fans expected, it was exactly the direction Oda wanted to take his story, which we should respect. Either way, I enjoyed the fight. I mean, we got to see the most anticipated Gear 5, which has been spoken about so many times throughout the years. But, you know, we listened to all voices from every corner of the fandom, which has led us to make Zoro versus King the most visually stunning fight in One Piece. Once the secret about King's race was out, there was no reason for him to hold back any longer, which was added to the fact that Zoro had just awakened the Conquerors and was challenging the lead performer vigorously, which was a first in many decades. The final act, where Zoro was climbing up debris to reach King while fire dragons rained upon him, was, in my opinion, the best way to depict a top-tier fight. Two unstoppable forces clashing with no regard to their surroundings or even to their own limitations. In that very second, I was unable to believe that Zoro was fighting a flying opponent, and once Zoro completed his attack and the dust settled, the best ending to a fight was created in One Piece as Zoro cut the ending screen depicting his initial Z. Truly King of Hell. You know what? Just realized we started and ended this list with Zoro.
That's funny.
なってやろうじゃねえか。地獄の王に。
Alright, that's it for this time. Watch this video where we discuss the 20 best showcases of power in anime history. See you in the next one.